Well, welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Mr. Dan Tran.
Hi.
Dan, tell me a little bit about yourself and if you want, what you do professionally.
So I'm from Canada, from Montreal. That's in the province of Quebec. That's the French province in Canada. And I'm Vietnamese Canadian, but born here. So pretty much grew up here my entire life and studied to become a doctor. That was my dream. Probably more my parents' dream, and they whispered in my ear when I was a baby in the cradle, and then that's what I wanted to do. Quotations, but whatever. So, couldn't ask for anything better in terms of a job, in terms of a career. So, and now I specialize in internal medicine. I do a bit of cardiac ultrasound and critical care. Internal medicine here is very different from the United States. United States, it's basically it's only a 3-year specialty. It's like a family doctor for old people, while in Canada, it's a 5-year specialty, and it's you're like more recognized as a specialist, and you do a lot of things like critical care or cardiology, respirology, and all these other things.
The beginning started off like a dating profile, telling me all about yourself, and then the career part went a little bit different. I like that though, because I'm going to ask you the same question I asked our friend Simon.
Yeah.
Do you have soft hands?
No, I don't. I played a lot of sports. I did a lot of baseball and like martial arts and all these things. So I have really rugged, callousy, shitty hands.
That's usually how I choose my doctor. When I had to pick out like my family practitioner, they were giving me like a list of doctors to choose from. And every single one I would say had what I would call like resting bitch face, which is like where they just look super pissed off all the time. And I'm like, can I get someone who's nice? And she pointed out this guy that was on there, like this young dude. And I was like, is his hand soft? And she goes, I don't know about his hands, but I know he dressed up as a pizza for our Halloween party. And he was a pretty cool dude. So first time I met him, I'm like, what's up, man? And I go to handshake him and I shake his hand and I'm like, you do have soft hands. And he goes, yeah, she mentioned you said that, which I thought was a little bit weird, but now meeting you, I understand. I'm like, is that a compliment or is that a jab at me?
But yeah, so yeah, I mean, yeah, it's I would say a lot. Unfortunately, yeah, a lot of us have resting bitch faces. I think I have one. I have more Asian poker face syndrome.
Asian poker face.
So that's where people think I'm mad, and kind of like RBF, I guess.
You have a serious look about you, which I think is needed as a doctor. But at the same time, if you can come in, like if you're delivering news or something that's not the best, you can come in with that serious look and then, you can say something. But then you can cheer somebody up by just like smiling or by cracking a joke. I think that's what's really needed. You probably deal with it on an everyday basis. I mean, how hands-on are you with your clients?
Very hands-on in terms of like hands or in terms of like patient contact.
Patient contact. It seems like probably one of the biggest problems in the industry when it comes to medicine is the amount of how understaffed you guys are. I mean,
yeah, definitely, and not just in medicine, but also in nursing and the preps, like the orderlies. It's just we're very understaffed. I don't know what else to say about that.
Well, it's stressful. I mean, if you look at like every time I've been to the emergency room, I mean, it takes like an hour and a half before I get some actual immediate attention from somebody. I mean, I've been in there a couple of times for a couple of accidents that have happened, but like it's difficult. Everybody seems to be really stressed out, really, really tense. And I get that through a serious situation. But I think what's needed more in the future is like doctors and all these types of things. But I don't see it really becoming more popular. I actually see the numbers dwindling down even farther because of the aspect of like social media, all these types of things that are coming out now is giving everybody an amazing outlet to be creative, which don't get me wrong, isn't a bad thing. But when it comes to like, back in the day, it was like, you need to be a doctor, you need to be a CEO of a company, you need to be president, you want to be an astronaut, all these other types of jobs that you had as a kid. And now it's like, you want to start your own hot sauce company, go ahead. It's like, whoa, we can do that now?
Yeah, no, it's definitely, and I would also add to that exactly, I think like not just social media, but like it's so easy to start a business now, or anything, any enterprise. And medicine, it's just this long track, right? I mean, it's like it's 4 years, it's 4 years of undergrad, then another 4 years of med school, and then anywhere from 2 to 5 years of residency, and then a lot of times do a fellowship. Like our buddy Simon's going to do another fellowship. That's going to be another 2, 3 years. I mean, you only become a fully fledged doctor, by the age of like 31. Like I'm 35. So like I've only been practicing for 4 years, and if I did a fellowship, then maybe I've only been practicing for 2 years, right? So so there's a long, and it's within that there's like I mean, now we don't do 24-hour calls anymore, 24-hour shifts anymore, or even like 30 hours back in my day, because of like labor practices and safety and all that
Yeah.
stuff. So now they're more 12 or 16 hours, but back in my day, we used, as a resident or med student, I used to do like anywhere from 70 to 110 hours a week. And and that's not including studying for the exam. Like we also had exams, right? Because you're still studying, you're still not fully trained, so you have your exposure part, and then you also have you still have to study for an exam, right?
Do you consider all the book smarts like super essential though? I look at like a lot of what the doctors have to go through, but I also like I think people give doctors this label of like you're going to know the answer to everything whenever
Yeah,
something happens to me. And I'm like, you got to look at them as like a lab coat. I mean, I'm talking to you as obviously person to person, but like through my eyes through the medical field, I've been tossed back, I've been left down, I'm still dealing with something I've been trying to get solved since January, but the COVID situation that hit, everything got backtracked. My medication, everything that I needed for us, I figured out was a severe spinal injury, like not even last week. Turned out the medication I've been trying to go for just keeps getting denied and denied and denied. And to do an appeal process, you have to go through courts. But I think we look at these doctors when we're hurt and we're like, you need to know the answer to this immediately and fix me right now. And I'm like, it's just another person in a lab coat. I feel like you could sit there and study a book and do what I do. Like I'm not Googling up, what do you call it? Like diagnosing myself, but I'm looking like which one is similar to what I'm dealing with. And once you start looking at every single thing that could be something that could be wrong with you, you start to realize everything has the same freaking symptoms.
yeah,
Everything is so damn similar, which makes me look at you guys and go, you guys are under so much stress, not only with wanting to help somebody, but also the time and care you have to make sure you're getting the right thing narrowed down.
yeah. No, it's exactly, and I think it's weird because you have like you have on one hand, like you said, it's like you got people are like, oh, like they always say like, oh, aren't you a doctor? Like they always joke, my friends joke with me sometimes, like, oh, like like what's 43 times 58? Like I don't know, like aren't you a doc? Like kind of like as a joke, like it's like like no, we know we're just like maybe 10 years down the line or 5, you're going to be an expert on podcasting. It's just I'm just a person that's specialized in a field and spent around 15 years in that field, right? That's it. That's all. That's all it is. And who obviously worked a lot, anywhere from 70 to 100 hours, whether studying or working on that field. So obviously we know a lot about that field. But the thing too is that on the flip side, we don't know, like you said, we don't know everything, and we don't, and it's not even just we as a person, science and medical science doesn't know everything. And I think because I think now we're so used to like with Amazon, and we're so used to having everything, like, oh, I have a pain, like why doesn't it go away? Because I mean, you ordered, a
two day
fucking,
two day delivery, bro. It comes
yeah,
there, you get that immediate thing. And if you have to keep going back to a doctor, you're like, maybe I need to get a new doctor because he's not doing it right. It's like, but
yeah,
at the same time, you got to look at what is he looking at? He's studying you. A lot of it has to come down to one of the biggest problems, which is the fact that you guys have a lot of people to work with. You don't get that personal connection. I mean, if you talk to somebody long enough, you start realizing, like, I remember when I was in there, when I first got my doctor after the soft hands talk and everything, and I'm talking to him, he's just getting to know me, trying to get as much information as possible. And then around the third time I started visiting him, he was starting to try and narrow down a diagnosis. He's like, is it a spinal issue or is it a mental issue? It seems like you're going under a lot of stress. It seems like you have a lot of pent up things. You might need to maybe talk it out because there's a gut to mind connection. And it's about finding that information. You end up finding this person's going through heart problems, what's going on in their life. You figure out that they're severely depressed. They might have lost somebody. And it's something like that that can be overlooked so quickly because you're looking at serious stuff. I mean, I think that's the point of what a doctor's trying to do first, is eliminate anything that could be major. Like, are you having a stroke? Are you having a heart attack? Are you having these types of things? Is there a problem with your heart? Is there a problem with your liver? But then they start looking down at the mental aspect of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, and that's a thought. You're 100% right. Like, we're gonna like we're medicine. Western medicine is amazing at making so that you don't die. We're really good at you not dying, at preventing you from dying. Everything else after that, it starts to get real iffy, including pain management. We're really bad at that. When you think about that's, it's like, yeah, the opioid crisis, right? It's like, it's, amongst other reasons, but it's like we're not good when it comes to like pain and depression, all these things. Like, we're not meant for that. We're meant to like save your life. And then the rest, you kind of have to like deal with it, which sucks because I think people don't want to do that. They want to like take the responsibility off of themselves, whether that's like healthy eating or whatever, or exercise and all that stuff. And a lot of it, sometimes it's unfortunate. The pain management, it's not their fault and it's other things, but other times it is a lot of, like obesity or bad posture and, seated position, or, like all these things can affect you, and you have to take, I guess, take care of it on your own. And then people go to a doctor, they want either some pain meds or some antibiotics. It's like this quick fix that we're talking about, and that just doesn't exist. And I think, yeah, I think people need to know that more. And then sometimes they just flip on the other side, and which is what we're kind of seeing with COVID, right? It's kind of like, oh man, these doctors, they don't know anything, they're all stupid, it's just a scam. And I watched the Plandemic on YouTube and all these like, wacky stuff, and it's like, come on, man. Like, look, we're still pretty good, but we're not like God mode. We're not on God mode. We're just pretty good. We're
I
not
think
dummies,
I
you know?
think I think it showed two sides of people. It showed the people that are the conspiracy theorists, which, don't get me wrong, I do listen to a couple of them, and I'm like, yeah, I get it. It's pretty weird that all this happened and Netflix happened to release some goodies when around the same time, but as in a joking way. But if you look at the COVID situation, which actually was going to lead me down to what I was going to ask you about, which was the Psychonaut thing I saw on your bio
Yeah,
on Instagram. That's a good one. Don't let me forget about that. But when it comes to a lot of what we talk about, two types of people that are viewing this thing, is there are people that are stepping up, the people in New York that are clapping, banging pots and pans for doctors. That's cool and all the first couple of days. After a while, it gets a little bit old. But, first responders and doctors and stuff, they are, a lot of them like you, are on the front lines, and you guys are adapting to something that has never really been seen before, at least not for a very long time. I mean, based on the COVID situation, how much have you had to try and learn and trying to cram in the last couple of minutes to be able to adjust?
that is, that's a great question. I mean, and it's only really people, I guess, that do critical care, emergency medicine, maybe family medicine, infectious disease, like because the other special, like my brother's a surgeon, like he probably hasn't really picked up a book or anything, or picked up a medical journal since, but because he's not really affected by COVID, right? Like he's, surgery is surgery. But anyone that does emergency medicine or intensive care and stuff like that, that are directly implicated by it, or maybe respirology too, yeah, it's crazy because I had to like cram. Like it's like you have to like cram all. It's like you feel like almost like you're kind of like in med school again. You're like, what, like, because you thought you knew everything, and then suddenly and then normally we do what we call CME, continuing medical education, but normally it's like little increments, like, oh, like this new study came out, this new drug came out, and what's, like little,
Yeah, like a new device to use that might help in a better scenario, make it quicker. Now you're like, now you have to germex your hands 4 times, do 3 spins, germex again, and then walk into a room and then greet the patient, and then you got germex again. It's like, we get the sanitary aspect of things. I understand that's a grave importance to not spread infection, but it's like, you guys are doing so much new stuff in the last couple of minutes, and then people are always complaining about the fact that, like, oh, they're not doing their hardest, or they're not doing their hardest, or they're fighting too hard. It's like, can we just find a common ground and understand that they know as much as we do? We're finding out new things every single day. I think at one point they were talking about Advil and Tylenol was a cause of all this, that was making your immune system lower. I'm like, hang on a second, that doesn't sound right. Then a week later, it's something completely different. Everyone's got strong views on this, but I look at the medical professionals and all the guys dealing with it. I'm like, they know as much as the next guy. The biggest thing that people can do to help in this scenario is just, if you're not severely sick, don't go to the doctor. Don't
yeah,
go unless you literally are dying, like forcibly, like you can't move from your house. You feel like you're about to just die
Yeah.
right now. If you have a headache, stay the fuck home. Take a Tylenol, take an Advil. I'm not a medicator of drugs, but deal with it because you guys have bigger scenarios going on right
That being said, though, we're now starting to see a bit more like this is what we were afraid of is that people are afraid to go to the ER because of COVID, and we're starting to might start to see a like what we call excess deaths from like things that would normally happen because people would normally come into the ER. Like, my dad just passed away about 2 months ago, and we don't really know of what, but you know, I I kind of told him, oh, you should, like I wasn't sure I wasn't there, but I told my mom I should bring him, to the ER if you're that concerned. He cried. Like, anyways, long story. My dad, he was a bit of a hypochondriac, and he was very sick to begin with, so it was hard to say what was real and what was not real. But I'm like, okay, well, if you're concerned, just bring him into the ER, right? But then my mom didn't want to go because she was deathly afraid of the COVID, so she didn't go. And 2 days later, he died. So um, you know,
now. Do you
of
think
course, like,
this?
I'm not saying like, I mean, again, like he's been on the decline for a long time, and he's been complaining of. He was like he cried wolf all the time, so it was always I always told him like one day it's gonna be real, and we're not gonna be able to know if it's real. And it turns out it was that time, but it was unfortunate that happened during COVID or a little bit before COVID, I would say, um, because my in regular time my mom probably would have brought him to the ER in time, but in this time she was a bit afraid. So
Well, there's so many complications, not even when it comes to medical with COVID and people being afraid. But do you think this is going to bring to a point where doctors are actually going to start making house calls again? Like, are we going to see that where people are coming up in mass to somebody's home? Because I'm like, I know so many people that are afraid to even get the newspaper anymore. I mean, a long time ago, I did a podcast on, I think it's called Social Credit.
mhm,
That China deals with, where they they'll call on somebody, call the government if somebody's not following rules or protocols or something to get their social credit up, which helps in scenarios of like getting a loan,
yeah,
getting a new house, and it can stop you from getting a loan or a house. And we're seeing that now. Like I know some neighbors that called the cops on a few of our neighbors for just walking out without a mask to check the mail. And I'm like, this is becoming like a snitch scenario. I'm like, what's going to I guess end up eventually happening here?
I think, like, I mean, because we always like, so I think the world, I don't know like how you guys view yourself, but I think the world always looks at the United States with fascination, and Canada in particular, because we're right next to you guys. And we share a lot of similarities in terms of culture. But I think, like, I feel that sometimes you guys are too extreme. And I feel like, you're a good force for this, like kind of like Joe Rogan. Like, you need just both sides. Like even from a medical professional point of view, like that's silly to just like outside is great. Like that's the problem. Like I heard people were asking me like, oh, can I go? Like, can I just go on my balcony? And I'm like, please go on your balcony. No, but like,
Yeah.
oh, they told us to stay inside. I'm like, ah, geez, not like. Basically, don't be around a lot of people
Well,
or too close to them.
that
Outside is actually good because there's a lot of air, so the virus goes away.
that's what we tried for a long time when this thing first hit. I mean, they were telling us you just need to isolate yourself for 2 weeks. People were talking about like, oh, we're just going to stay on our side of the house. The governments are going to mandate it. You're going to get a fine if you go outside. Then it was like, hold on a second. Doesn't that go against our constitutional rights as people to be free and, not have this power that's keeping you inside 24/7? For the first week, people followed these rules. And the second week is like, okay, now we're at 2 months and they're telling us they don't know when it's going to clear up. There's going to be a second wave that's going to hit. Now people are just like, fuck it. And they're walking outside, being right next to each other, going to the park, doing whatever they want to do, opening up golf courses again. I'm like, you, the weirdest thing about this is you can't stop the spread. You can slow the progress of it spreading until there's a vaccine, until there's a whatever that comes across, but then the second wave's going to hit or a new strain's going to come out. We don't know. We just got to adapt. There's people that are asymptomatic that are getting it, that are showing signs of it. Obviously, elderly are more in danger. But it gets to the point where it's like you're going to end up living in your house for, we don't even know. It could be a couple more months before businesses start really opening back up. We only have some stuff coming. And I'm like, it sucks, that this is all happening. But I'm like, Sweden, everyone gave them shit for doing what they did, letting everything stay open, doing whatever, just letting it flow. Now they're at the clear of it, even though they're still getting flack, and people are saying no, they did it wrong. But a few countries like Italy that are starting to see clear ups, that are starting to see all these things happening, trying to follow rules. I think Denmark was another place that was seeing some clear ups, and I heard somebody on an interview talking about it over there. I'm like, it's it's going to happen. It's got to run its course. I think the main thing we need to do right now is also not worsen it. Don't travel out of your state. Don't travel out of your country. Don't try and spread it somewhere that might not be severely infected. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, like, so I mean, the jury's still out about Sweden. Like, will only time will tell whether Sweden was right and whether everyone else was right. I think the running the course thing is like there's a yes and no to it. Like, I mean, ideally you don't want it to run its course completely, because ideally you want enough people to survive until the vaccine. But the problem is, if to get that, if you have to like just limit the your constitutional rights too much, and then that's obviously not good. And I know Americans are really big on freedom and their rights, right? Arguably more than potentially their own lives. And I think that's where it's like this interesting mix, like this, it's basically a clash, because it's like your freedom or your rights are basically endangering or can endanger someone else. So it'd be okay if it's like, hey, you know what? I'm okay with dying. I'm going to put myself at risk. That's cool. But the problem is not just you anymore. Is that, yeah, sure. Okay, cool. You can sign a waiver, that you're going to die and whatever. And even then, that's not even the case. It's like, it'd be actually cool if people who were like pro deconfinement, they would sign like a DNR, do not resuscitate, don't give me oxygen if I ever get COVID, something like that. So it'd be like, at least there's that, right? So at least they can be like, they can put their money where their mouth is, right? But a lot of times that's not the case. A lot of times, like they'll talk a big game, and then it's like, oh, then they get sick, and then they're in the ICU and in the ER, and then suddenly it's save me, dog, and then $1 million of healthcare just got spent on you just because you were being a protesting dick or whatever.
Yeah.
Like there's like that part too that's like not and then
Well,
there's the fact that you can also infect someone else,
my
right?
biggest problem or issue was what I was fearing when this thing started was when I first started this podcast was to make communication an option again. It seems like social media took over and people were communicating through that, which is like false communication. And I think you've noticed, you've seen in media as well, and probably noticed with people, you're very, very drained and you're not happy or at least positive and don't really feel well when you're just isolated inside your house 24/7. I'm pretty sure we've all noticed that. It's probably where a lot of deaths have kind of increased because, I mean, if you're not mentally or emotionally well, your body's just going to want to give up. It's not going to want to fight.
Mhm.
It's going to be easier to get infections and stuff. But when it comes to what I was fearing was we went from hating what was going on, this virus, to hating the government, to now where we're seeing, over at least over here in the States, it's dividing people again, like politics. Now it's not Trump or it's not Joe Biden or it's whatever. It's now, are you wearing a mask or are you not wearing a mask? If you're
Mhm.
following the rules and regulations and wearing a mask in a store that's requires you to, you get looks from people that aren't wearing a mask. Like, you think you're fucking better than me. And then you also get the complete opposite with, wow, you're just careless. You don't care if you get anybody sick. It's like, when is it going to go back to us not worrying about, choosing sides against people again? We understand this. Like, people always talk about the new normal, this new thing. I'm like, it's not new. We've experienced this same incidents before. When people come together and truly start caring about one another, start talking again, is
Yeah.
when something threatens us. And that is a terroristic attack. When 9/11 happened, we all came together. We all became
Mhm.
friends. We all did this. But it only lasts a couple of months. This
Yeah.
idea that they're implementing, such as new normal, where we're going to be doing this for whatever a years, there's never going to be the same again. Not true. We'll go back to our old ways. That's just human behavior. But I think it's a great time right now to find clarity within yourself, which
Yeah.
leads into the psychonaut thing you're talking about. What exactly do you mean by psychonaut? And are you taking any extra drugs to be able to reach that state of consciousness, or are you finding forms of meditation to get you there?
So I've never been good enough. I mean, I used to meditate 90 minutes a day, like 10 years ago in med school, but then, and I was to the point where I was good enough to like have lucid dreaming. So that was pretty cool. Um, but after that, I got a girlfriend, and like, a girlfriend's the least zen that you can the girls tend to get you out of your zen. So at least for me. Anyway, so then I was always dabbled into, like meditation and, Taoism and Buddhism and all that stuff. Even though I was born Catholic, hardcore Catholic and Christian. Um, and then actually my friend, who I think would actually be a really good interview for you, who's also a doctor, he's a cardiologist. Um, he introduced me to MDMA, and then after that we did LSD together.
Bro, you got to explain to me one of these trips, man, because I have an episode I really recommend of you for you that you listen to of mine. It's called Steve Cantwell.
Mhm.
He took salvia. I
Correct.
swear to God, I have never heard the best drug trip story. He spent, it was 45 seconds in real life, but he spent 8 years in a drug trip living as another life in Austin, Texas, or Tyler, Texas, where he worked at an apple orchard. He said by the fourth year, he got a promotion at his job, upgraded his cable. He literally on the podcast, I mean, I usually you hear something like that, like you're like, this person's nuts. But he's sitting there telling me, he's like, you know how many times I thought about suicide and thought it would end my trip if I did that, but I didn't know if it would kill me in real life as well. And he was talking about like he had memories of his kids. He woke up on a boat in this trip. All he remembered was sinking in through a floor of a gun room and waking up in this on the like his buddies pulling him on this boat that he had never met before, but they all knew him. His brain told him he had short-term memory loss or something. And I'm like, is this what your brain does when you're in a coma? So like I'm super interested into what you had to experience.
I mean, okay, well, I mean, the first with MDMA is different. MDMA is not a psychedelic. I mean, as you know, I don't know if you have you taken MDMA
I
or
haven't taken anything but weed, and I had my balls sucked into my asshole in that trip. So I'm not doing any drugs anymore.
That's good. All right, so yeah, MDMA. I mean, like, it's a very empathogenic drug. It generates a lot of empathy, and that's with everyone. You do not want to take Molly and go to the hood or to a bad neighborhood because you just can't fight. They're just gonna mug you. You're just gonna want to hug them and
To
just
quote my favorite movie, it's going to be bad times, man. Bad times.
yeah. So you don't like you just literally can't conceive of violence with on MDMA, and you understand that we're all kind of one. Every human being is one and the same, but you're not tripping out. You're not like seeing things. It's more of like a state of mind. I mean, it increases the amount of serotonin, which is what antidepressants do, but it does it in such a huge burst, right? SSRIs, they do give you a little bit, a tiny little hit of serotonin every day, so that you have to take it, every day and pay big pharma a lot of money, right? So, but MDMA, no, it's like this giant hit, right? I'm not saying people should not. It's not quite the same mechanism, but so I'm not advising anyone to start taking 20 pills of like Zoloft in one shot, right? You're not going to have the same effect, but and it's also dangerous. But
What exactly is Zoloft?
it's an antidepressant. We're like a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So it
Okay,
works.
I'm not going to lie to you. I just got off the phone with my doctor not even an hour ago, I swear to you, and he just recommended me a prescription for that. So that's
For
what I
so
was
long.
actually, yeah, that's what I was actually going to pick up after we left this meeting. So
Um,
I'm just curious if I take a bunch of it, am I going to start seeing shit?
please don't. You're probably much safer taking MDMA. And MDMA actually is approved as, I think, like a fourth line therapy now for PTSD, for post-traumatic stress disorder. So there's this huge, resurgence in kind of like all these illegal drugs, like psychedelics and LSD and all these things, because basically what happened is that in the 50s, they got invented, and in the 60s, the hippies took control of it, and then the Nixon administration obviously view it as a huge threat because he promote like peace, love, unity, which is really not, pro Vietnam
It's
War.
the scene from Pineapple Express where the dude smokes weed and they're like illegal, and they did that whole thing. It's because I think what the problem with these drugs is the way we view them is the problem. Well, I mean, even through my experience, when you take it, it shows another perception on reality, and sometimes that's the clearer one than the one you've been seeing for so long. I noticed when I smoked weed, and I used to get trashed, dude. I mean, so high, like it was every time I got high, which is why I don't do it, was something like the scene like your ball slipping into your asshole. It was way too much to the point you're like, no, this isn't fun for me. I forgot how to breathe. And so after doing that so much, I started noticing I'm not against it, but I'm pro for it, because I've noticed like it's caused me to sometimes in moments of my life to examine things that I would when I was high, such as like a detail on a table, such as feeling like my fingertips, or being able to notice the trees. When I got high, I was constantly self-correcting. I'd notice like, oh, you're not sitting straight up. Oh, time to sit straight up. Oh, it's like these self-correcting moments. But I think that's one of the benefits you see when you take psychedelics or something. Not only is it awakening something or something you can't really describe or something that's crazy, but it shows a different side inside of yourself. Like they always talk about unlocking the third eye or something, but it really does uncover some secrets about yourself. So I'm curious to what you might have discovered.
Oh man, I mean I attribute a lot of my growth and evolution as a person to MDMA and LSD. So on MDMA, I just took it like once or twice in my life, and the second time I took it at a rave, and I really disliked it. I don't understand how people take ecstasy at a rave. It's like for me, it's like I'm not really about pleasure. I'm more about like insights, depth, growth. Unlocking the next level or the new meaning or whatever. I'm not about like like just having sex with a bunch of girls and partying all the time. Like I'm not about that, which made me very weird and different from other people my age at the time and everything. But so with MDMA, I basically discovered the meaning of love and or how to love a woman, or if I was gay, like another guy, or God knows what. And it was because of my friend Bobby, the cardiologist. He's the one who introduced me to it. I kind of just I took it, and I just you just feel at one with the world and you see everything. And I remember the story, like the next day we decided to go to brunch. And before that I had a very I find in this, I find in American culture, you have a lot of this adversarial view of romantic relationships. Like there's always like talking about, oh, who has the power, who wants the other one, and it's like,
Someone's got to be better. Yeah.
who's gonna be better? And it's like, oh, like there's always that. I find that kind of like that vibe going on, which I don't think maybe other countries don't have as much of that vibe. Where us is more just about like couple them and companionship and love.
It's also a testosterone thing. When a guy walks into a room, you kind of size them up. Like, if I got into a fighting scenario, would I beat your head in with a rock? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think there's like so, you know, um, and and so I was kind of like that, right? I was kind of brought up in that mold, right? Like girls are to have sex with, and they're gonna try to get money and time and attention from you, and you're trying to get sex and affection from like it was kind of like that very transactional, how do you get as much sex and affection from them while spending the least amount of time and money and energy on them, right? Which is kind of like how a lot of 20-year-olds think, like and that's why if you're a player and you bang a lot of girls, that's really cool because you're obviously exerting a lot less time, to get what you want, right? And so I was kind of like in that mold, and I remember like his girlfriend at the time, we were going out to brunch, and she's like kind of like in this like cute voice, like she was like 45 years younger. She's like, oh, I want watermelon, in almost like kind of like this juvenile way, right? Very like frivolous way, right? Girly frivolous way. And we're like, okay, like whatever. And we went to have brunch, and it was great, and we had a good time. And he dropped me off, and I'm like, oh, what are you gonna do now? And he's like, oh, I'm gonna go get watermelon. And he was like, and I was like, oh, well, what are you guys doing? What are you cooking? What are you making? He's like, I don't know. And he's like, and I'm like, so why are you getting the watermelon? Because that's what my baby wants. And I think because of the MDMA, and he said that, and the fact that he just did it because he loved her. And again, not in this like pussy whip, I'm just gonna do whatever my, like real, like just like out of like, yeah, that's what my baby wants. That's what she fucking gets. That's kind of like versus like this transactional, like, oh, I'm not gonna do what she says me do, or if I do it, then she owes me this, and all that stuff. And it just at that moment it just clicked. Like I totally got it. I was like, oh, that was like
It shows you what is this person truly for you though? I mean, I think that's like, I mean, I'm in my 20s, but I don't go out and drink. I don't go out and party. I don't go out and do a whole lot. It's not because I'm boring. It's just I have no need for it. You know what I mean? I had experiences in my life that kind of kept me away from it. But like, it's the same reason I've been in relationships, but I'm actually looking to settle down. Like, honestly, it's the whole thing of like, you're looking for somebody. You know, I know so many friends of mine that have like 5 or 6 kids from a bunch of different girls or something. I'm like, you're fucking miserable. You are constantly complaining about, oh, this girl done this, oh, she took this, oh, this is crazy, some psychotic stuff. And I'm sitting there looking at it like, yo, like I feel for you, man. I mean, it's cool you got kids and all, but it's not fun. It's not good payments. You're not settled, right? You're not thinking clearly. You still don't even know what you want. I'm 22 years old. I have no fucking clue what I want to do for the rest of my life. I have fucking nothing, basically, at least going for me, you know, besides like I do this for fun. I don't want to turn this into a job because I enjoy it so much, but it's like, do I want to go back to school? Do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? And it's like, I think what this COVID situation has really did for a lot of people, where I say it's been a benefit. I had worked out every single day for going on 8 years, man. I had never missed one single day. I still work out at home. Don't get me wrong. It's my therapy, keeps the demons away. But when gyms shut down, I've never missed going to the gym. So I had to build my own. I had to spend a couple grand and build my own home gym. But it also showed me like, I wouldn't travel. I wouldn't do a fucking thing because I was afraid of missing that day.
Mm.
So I never experienced life. And now when things start opening back up, I think what it did for a lot of people, realized how important some of the stuff that we were taking for granted was, coming in contact with people. I'm going to travel, man. I want to go visit all these people I podcasted with. I want to go spend time and learn as much as I possibly can about the world, because much like people are obsessed with taking a pill and trying to live forever, immortality is not a thing we have mastered yet. So I know I'm not going to be around forever. I'm only aiming for 26. So, you know, that goes down a deep joke. I had a doctor that tried to get me into porn. Now you see why I judge the medical industry.
Wow.
But it was a compliment, I guess, but just in a shady way. But like, it's important, this type of stuff too. That's why when I hear people talk about psychedelics or talk about these types of things, I always want to know their experience. I mean, I'll send you a profile of a guy. His name's Jake. He grows psychedelic mushrooms and tries to learn the mycology behind it and all this type of stuff. But when you start listening to these people's stories and people that are dived heavily into it, they sound insane to a lot of people. And I think that's just the way that as a world we've been thinking for so long. Cannabis is bad. All these types of things are bad. I'm like, if information we have for so long, 10 years later gets found out that that was completely wrong in the new information, so it's a complete 180 of what we were thinking, then who's to say that for all this time we've been thinking this one drug is so bad and so vicious? Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it's actually a mind helper or a road paver for a lot of our lives.
I definitely, I mean, I can tell you about my LSD experience, which really changed my life. First of all, a few things. First of all, LSD is completely not toxic. Like you cannot die. You cannot overdose on that. Like a million tabs of acid.
I
That's what they
believe
did.
you.
They gave it. Yeah.
I believe you. My cousin, he actually, during the summer, he spent a couple months with us. He's like, "You want to go take LSD?" I was like, "No." I watched Dewey Cox, where he met the Beatles and they took LSD, and he had a dream he got chopped in half. I'm good. He's like, "Okay." He took like 8 tabs and we lost him for a day and a half. I think he was just out in the middle of the woods. I'm like, the fucking woods is 4 miles. Where did this guy go? Like, I had no clue. And he just came back all fine. Like, what's up? I'm like, "Where's your bike?" He's like, "I don't know."
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing is, obviously, if you have like a history of schizophrenia or psychosis, then you probably shouldn't do that. But otherwise, and obviously, you have to like make sure that your environment is protected. So that's kind of dangerous in the woods because imagine he met a bear, he obviously wouldn't be able to defend himself or run. You know,
When
like
I say woods, I mean, I think there's probably a couple of squirrels out there. We're right on the beach, so it's man-made woods, I would
okay,
say.
all right.
There's a
But
cat sanctuary though, which is pretty dope. It's like a bunch of bamboo and shit. I'm like, how did this get back here?
like you don't want to go crazy and then jump off the balcony because then in that sense LSD did kill you, right? Because you wouldn't have jumped off the building without it. But otherwise, it's extremely safe if you just make sure your environment is safe. And so I learned the meaning of love on MDMA, and I learned the meaning of life on LSD. I took it with Bobby, and we took it together. And basically, I think like I forgot what it was, but it was just like so you basically what how it happens is that it starts acting after around 45 minutes, and then it starts to crescendo, and you climax about 2-3 hours in, and then after that it kind of like slowly starts going down. And when you climax at the peak of the effect, okay, that's when you have like maximum hallucination and maximum everything. Basically, your fabric of reality breaks down. And that's when you really understand like a lot of life. And then after that, as like how I kind of view it is basically what LSD does. The reason you hallucinate is that it breaks down your senses and it breaks down the barriers of your senses. And so you no longer see what this reality is. You kind of see what some can argue the other reality is, right? The whatever is out there, right? And then as the effect starts to taper off, your reality starts to come back, right? You start coming back here on Earth. But as you start coming back here on Earth, if you're smart, if you want to use your trip well, if you have good intentions, and you're not just out to like party or whatever. Not that I'm not having anything against that either, but I don't think it's a good party drug because it's pretty unpleasant, to be honest. It's not a fun experience, acid. It's a very deep spiritual experience. It's not fun. I don't want it. I would never want to do it every week or every month. Like you do it once and then you want to take a break for like 6 months. You want to be like, because it's such a heavy, intense, and spiritual experience. So, as your mind starts coming back together, you start, like you said, you see your life differently, right? Because it's getting your life as you see it gets repieced together, but it's no longer, you thought that, oh, I have to stay in this relationship, I have to stay in this job, but now it's repiecing. It's like, oh wait, no, I don't. Oh, what, well, why don't I do this? And oh yeah, that brother, my brother, yeah, I should talk to him. Like all these things, like it completely rewires your brain as the thing comes back together.
Kind of
And
like if you're looking at a boat, if you're like getting all the barnacles off, that's kind of what your brain's experiencing, is getting all the bad stuff kind of out, maybe some wrongs that you would have done.
that's exactly it. It takes away all the anchors that were there, and then I'm like, look, if you want to hold back on those anchors when you come back, you're free to do it, right? Like it's not like I didn't quit my career as a doctor, right? That was an anchor, right? Because I like it, I think it's good. I didn't leave my family, I didn't leave, like I didn't ditch my friends because I like them, right? But the negative stuff where like it's like, oh, that's not cool, or that wasn't good, or this was kind of toxic, or this is a bit of a drain. It's like boom, now you see it, and you see a lot of things that your mind didn't see before. And at the peak of it too, like for me, since I'm like I think a lot, I think all the time, and my brain just tries to make connections all the time. That's all my brain tries to do.
I'm an insomniac, so I constantly am thinking. That's why he prescribed me that type of stuff, to get me to stop thinking so much. But I do a lot of my, I guess, life watching and kind of analyzing on things and trying to sort information out. Like, why does this happen? This happened, this happened, this happened. Not really be afraid of anything, but just trying to understand as much as I possibly can, like a sponge.
If I could give you like, if I could, maybe like friendly advice, it's like, yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, you're in not like see some. So this is one, like I learned like so many things, but one of the things I also learned because of LSD is like every strength is a weakness, and every weakness is a strength given its context. And that means that like you being an insomniac because you're thinking and all that,
It's my
obviously
strength.
it's your
That's
strength.
I post a podcast every single day, an hour conversation with somebody. I record 30 of these in a day or 20 of these in a day just because no sleep. I mean, I looked at it. I was like, I'm not doing anything besides playing fucking Dragon City on my phone. Let me stop spending real money on gems in a game to get me another dragon, and let me do something beneficial and learn to talk to so many people and gather as much information as possible.
So exactly, like it's so like, but that's why I always caution against him giving you the Zoloft or God knows what, because you're blunting that response. You understand what I mean? It's like all these people who are anxious, or can't sleep or God knows what. Anxiety is just like energy. It's just energy that you're not using well, and then it's like it's keeping you awake and it's not being funneled well. But imagine you hear of all these people like they were addicted or they were anxious, and then they just like they channeled into podcast, they channeled into working out, and suddenly it's a productive thing, right? You're just switching the energy around. So that's why I always caution against and that's my gripe against pharma and the medical community. I think obviously pharma has done a lot of good things, and obviously doctors have done a lot of good things. But I think especially when it comes to psychiatric disease, I think we're very bad at that. I don't
Oh,
think.
the cure for schizophrenia for a long time was electroconvulsive therapy, shocking your receptors to make sure when that reaction does happen, you just wouldn't slip into a schizophrenic rage. That might have been a nice short-term band-aid cure, but it's not a fix-all. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
So my colleagues in psychiatry won't like me saying this, but I don't like it's not very evidence based. It's not very scientific. Like cardiology is it's the heart. It's scientific. We can
You
monitor in
can
real
see
time.
it. You can't really
This is
look
like
in
the
at this thing.
mind, the soul. It's kind of like what you know. So
Well,
it's
what you're trying to do is you're comparing a broken hand to like breaking your brain. It's like your brain has dreams. Like for me, being an insomniac, I learned to study sleep. What exactly was sleep? Why can't I get it? Why does my buddy sleep with his eyes open? And I'm going to toss a stoner thought at you. I say stoner thought because when I try and explain to someone that doesn't have problems with sleep, they kind of like, I don't know what that means, or have never taken a drug trip. When you fall into a sleep, you get that REM state, that rest, that deep sleep basically. So when you get rapid eye movement, when your eyelids are shut and they're moving around constantly under your eyelids, I think of that as like a doorway searching for like an alternate universe, like a trip, like a dream basically. And when you are slipping into that dream, if you get too far into it, you experience a hypnic jerk, which is when you feel like you just fell and you
mm,
wake up like, holy shit, your heart's racing. Even though that could be scientifically backed up by a bunch of different things, it's a cool way of thinking of it. To
mm,
think that is your dream much like, doing a lucid dream where you get to actually move around and be functional in it. Is it possible that it's your brain slipping into another dimension? I mean, our brain is powerful to the point that we have no comprehension of. We're trying to figure out space. I'm like, fuck that. Let's figure out our minds first, because this one thing has the potential to unlock so much. I mean, idiot savants, those people that can draw a whole New York skyline that are supposed to be mentally challenged just by one quick glimpse of it. Like, our brain can do some really powerful shit if we put our minds to it.
yeah, no, exactly. And that's a good point. I never thought of that. That maybe REM sleep, because you do dream, dreaming happens in REM sleep. That could be that. But to go back to the LSD trip, like basically, so at the peak of it, I basically learned the meaning of life. And it seems very trite and like basic, but that's, as if you've ever studied like Eastern, philosophy, like the basic truths are simple. They're not, it's like, I always say there's a million facts or gazillion facts in the world, but there's maybe like 100 truths in the world. You only need to know about 100 truths, and, so, and one of the truths was like that I learned was basically you're either moving towards love or away from love, and that's basically it. And and that sounds like super lame. And what I'm trying to say is that, like, okay, so when you smile at someone, that's a little bit, it's a small one, it's a very small step. And when you kind of like shoo off a hobo, it's probably a small, it's not the end of the world. But then you can get into an argument with a friend. Then that becomes maybe a family feud. Then it becomes like a tribal clash. Then it becomes a war. Then it becomes genocide, right? But it's all the same energy, like, and it could all start from gossip. I mean, it sounds really lame, but you see the
It's
continuity.
It doesn't sound lame at all. I've blamed this for so long on social media. I call it false communication. The way we talk to each other nowadays is how
Yeah,
we're talking to each other in stores. It's autopilot mode. Like,
yeah,
hey, how's your day going? While you're still walking, you're saying that to me. I'm not going to give you a response if you're not going to sit there and legit ask me, how is your day going? What happens if I say no? You're like, all right, sounds good. And then keep on walking. No, it doesn't make sense. But we go home. I mean, I think it happened when Facebook started was people would go home and bitch about their day, and then people would like their posts, and then they would do it every day of the week. And by the end of the week, if their post went from 1 like to 2 like to 3 like to 4 like, then that one last post got 1 like. Then they delete it, and they don't feel that pat of acceptance on their back of people actually caring and listening to them. And that's the same thing we used to get when we sat down with a friend and had a meaningful conversation.
yeah. No, exactly. I think, and but I think, and it's good that like you're doing this podcast, and I think people are yearning for that like meaningful conversation. They're yearning for that. I think there's a backlash coming towards tech, towards social media and everything. I think, yeah.
I
So
think it's going to spark a. If I'm going to have to predict this, because I have to start doing this in my podcast now, I'm not seeing the future, but I am a little bit like The Simpsons, where I've said some shit that has happened. I predicted a week before COVID hit. I talked to a stockbroker. He said, he's telling me about stocks, and I'm sitting there like joking around. I'm like, I bet the safest stock to buy into is toilet paper. It never goes up and it never goes down. Fucking 1 week later, COVID hit, toilet paper stocks went up. I'm calling two things. One, it's going to be like I Am Legend. If a cure comes out, I'm just saying wait 6 months because the people in I Am Legend got the cure for cancer. Then everybody started turning into zombies. That's all I'm saying. Two is oh fuck, I had a really good one too. Oh no. All right, I'm going to be stuck on this one. All right. I
I
lost
really,
that one.
I really hope the first one doesn't come true. What you just,
What, the zombie one?
well, the zombie, yeah, that'd be not cool, but
Well, no,
yeah.
okay. I remember the second one now. The Luddite movement back in the day. Now, this took a while for me to get to this train of thought, but it really made sense. I talked to a guy who studies history. He's a history major, and he studies how history is doomed to repeat itself, that everything we're experiencing now can be related to a certain thing that happened in history. One thing that happened during the Industrial Revolution was the Luddite movement.
Mm,
Okay. The Luddite movement, machines were taking over, and people fought back against these working machines, these presses, these newspaper presses, all these things. They would break them and destroy them. All these farmers would. I think that's going to happen again. When you're saying a pushback of tech, I think people are going to realize, holy shit, every single job right now is now machines. It's what people are looking at right now because of the fact we can't come in contact with each other. It's safer to have a machine do something for you and some person come down and just wipe the machine down. So in the future, I'm predicting it now. We might see a Luddite movement thing. I'm just calling it. And if it comes true, I'm your God, people. I'm sorry.
all right. I mean, you know what? Like, you kind of already see. You see, like, how everything's become automated. So we're going back. Like, what's the big thing now? Crafts. Craft goods and like, oh, an artisan, right? Remember when we, like hundreds of years ago, we used to make fun of the artisan and the craftsman because it's like, why are you doing that when you can fucking get this like manufactured, precise, machine and all that stuff? And now it's the exact opposite. Now, if you go to IKEA, people make fun of your furniture. But if you get this like handmade whatever, like table, made out of like Native American wood or God knows what, it's like, then suddenly that's good now, or like this handcrafted bicycle. Now people want that again. It's kind of like this backlash that you're
I'll,
seeing over here.
I'll quote two things. One from my favorite TV show called Courage the Cowardly Dog, where the eel in the bathtub says, "Life is full of imperfections, but that's the beauty in it." I think for
Mhm.
so long we've been working with perfect. I mean, I've come across neighborhoods in my community that look exactly like the house beside it and the
Right.
house beside it, and it's like, how do you tell them apart? Then also Leonardo da Vinci, where he said, art is never finished, just left undone. The
Mm,
fact that we have to keep working at something and it's never truly perfected is some of the beautiful moments in our lives. I mean, people are not perfect. We have our flaws, but I think those flaws are what makes us different. It's not to get deep and emotional, but I think that's a true thing that hits deep for a lot of people that are experiencing, oh shit, like I do have this dream I want to pursue. I've been working in a company for 30 something years. Let's try and change the way my life has lived.
well, like, I mean, you're a young guy and you're starting out. I think it's important. I don't think because I was at your when I was your age, I kind of felt that like, like I was like so like, oh, like fucking deep. It's not that I can't party. Like, obviously I love partying, I love doing all the shit, but I also was not just like the guy that, oh, like, that wanted to, like, let's say, like, bang a girl and like just leave her there and just like, like, I just had like all these thoughts and these like, emotions and these things, kind of like you. And then like I felt bad for it because you know how it is, and it's, especially maybe at your age, or maybe it's a bit young, but it's all about being cool, looking good, being the toughest, the strongest,
Swag.
so all that shit, right? And it's like you kind of feel bad. It's like, yeah, but I got like all like, like, I'm a smart guy. I got all these insights. I got all of that. Like, I'm telling you right now, like, it's like that's gonna pay off way more than just having swag at 22 or 21. Because like, and if you have to constantly re-examine your life, I would like, I think that's a good thing because I examine my life every day ever since I was a kid. And people might think that's stupid or that's a waste of time. It's not, because it's like if you go on the wrong path, because you were just like in a blur state, like, oh well, I married this girl because that's what I was supposed to do, and I got a job in corporate because that's what my parents and society told me to do. It's like, dude, you just wasted 10 years, which questioning your life every day could have prevented, and you would have cut that short, like 6 months, and you'd be like, okay, no, this isn't the girl for me, or this isn't the job for me. So I would say question all the time. Now, there's obviously the counterparts, like some people just question, they're just kind of like, they never go into action, but it's like, like I'm not being like, I don't think I had the answers to life, but I did write, like, I don't know, like kind of like my rules for life, a bit like Jordan Peterson, but like 100 of them. It's just like a bunch of little like maxims and truths or whatever. And I think it's like, you got to examine your life all the time, but at some point you also have to take action, kind of like what you're doing, and then you course correct on the way. Like you're doing your podcast. It's like, every now and then, you're going to be like, hey, you know what, like, where's this podcast going? Do I still enjoy it? What do I want to do with it? Is, like, and you work with that. But some people, as you know, and you might know them, they become insurance adjusters, or they go corporate, and they just never even question anything. And then like 20 years later, they just have like this midlife crisis, and they don't know where it came from. And they're like, oh, like I'm unhappy. It's like motherfucker, you realize just now that you're unhappy? Like, and it's true. They just, because they kind of like, they dur it with like alcohol, or maybe like a trip down to Los Cabos, and like or like a new car gives them that little dopamine hit for a little bit. But what I suggest to you, maybe that's through weed or through meditation, or through whichever way you want, is that you stay very close to your core, to who you are, because that's like, you always want to be in dialogue with that, and just like constantly talk to it and say like, okay, am I doing the right thing according to me? Am I doing what I want to do in line with my values? And you just want to make sure that your actions always align with what your values are, what you want to do. So obviously this podcast is great because like, you want to learn about things, you want to discover things, so you're talking to everyone, and that's amazing. I really applaud you. And you say you want to travel. I think you should. I think getting out of the country, I mean, I guess now it's not really possible, but like, it's one of the, like, the best, like, visiting. I think you have a good mind for that, because some people, they just visit, they just want to see the monument, they just want to do that bullshit, right? They don't want to do it. I call it like the amazing race vacation. Whenever I travel, I love just talking to the people, because you see their mentality, their mindset, their culture is completely, like, even like how they think is different, because language changes culture. That's like, I speak 3 languages and maybe a little bit of Spanish, not that much, but like, because we speak English, French, and Vietnamese, and you notice that like language changes your psychology, because like, there's some words in English that don't exist in French, that don't exist in Vietnamese, and it's like, if they don't exist, then they're almost not even real, because you can't even think it, right?
Yeah.
They don't exist in it. So by going out there, you kind of like, you learn new things, you learn new perspectives, and I think that's like, over a lifetime, that pays a lot of dividends, more than whatever few $1,000s that you spend on your flight and on your lodging. Like, these are things that, like, I think are priceless, because you know how costly, getting married to the wrong woman and divorcing, and then all that stuff.
Well, life is like a Rubik's Cube, right? You want to try and figure the whole thing out, but you never really get it done. You get one side done, you realize the other side's fucked up. You go and try to fix the other side. It ends up messing up the one side you had. I mean, I think when I first started this thing, going into it, as one of the best things for me was, I thought I knew what the world was going to be. I thought I had it figured out. Thought I was like, early 20s. I got everything, all knowledge. And then after about 50 episodes in, I was like, wow, there's a wealth of information I have nothing about. I know nothing about. So I'm on 400, coming up close to 450. I'm like,
Wow.
look, all these people I've talked to, I've realized through myself, I have an ego issue. People give me compliments. I try and self-correct that about myself, because if you start feeding that ego, then it keeps me, I guess, complacent on where I'm at, where I'm standing in life, which I always want to try and perceive and do better, which I
Yeah.
think for a lot of people, they're just like, I'm doing pretty well. It's like, yeah, but you can go farther too. Like, I want to push that red line all the way until that shit cracks. Like, I want to feel, is this the best I can do? Then when I do leave here, I want to be like, I fucking did something.
Yeah, and I applaud you. And man, you're only 22. That's like, like, you have because now we live such a long time, and that's like, like, I'm like, Canada, we're much more socialist, we're much more left wing. Like, we're like, Canada as a whole, like we're like our right wing would be like your left wing party.
Canada's awesome. I know. You don't need to tell me anymore. That's one of the places I want to visit. I gotta hook you up. I think you'd love this. David Irwin. He's known as High Spoon on Instagram. He does
Okay.
cereal reviews while high. Dude, you'd have a blast with this dude for sure.
But yeah, so like what was I gonna say? Like that being said, I've worked extremely hard, my entire life. Especially like for me, getting into medicine was not easy because I have ADHD. So like it's really hard to learn for me. Like really, so you can imagine the amount of like I've worked like
I
probably.
have it. I have it too. I got you.
So it's like it was really hard. So I can appreciate like hard work and people who are successful. I mean, not everyone, but I would say almost everyone who's successful. It's like you look at like Simon's one of them, my friend Bobby's one. Like these guys are animals. Like they just work and work and work all fucking day, every day. And it's like they're just on their craft all the time. And sure, over 1 year or 2 years, that doesn't do much. But you do that over 10, 15, 20 years, that's a lot. That's a lot of that the gap starts to extend. And and then people would be like, well, 10, 15 years, that's a long time. Well, no, because if you started, last year, 10, 15 years from now, you're going to be like my age. You're going to be like still young-ish, but imagine 15 years of doing the same thing, like, or like, and perfecting it, what do you think, like, where do you think that goes eventually? That leads to fucking mastery. That leads to like, and what's 15 years of studying medicine, it becomes a fucking, you become a doctor and you get paid pretty well for it. But I mean, like same thing, if you do podcasting for 15 years and then like, you become like the number, like a number top 20 podcaster in America, and then you're making millions of dollars, people are going to think like, oh, fucking, like, Rob is like fucking, he's not, he's just a millionaire.
I'm a
Like,
phony. Don't worry about it. I never want to be rich and I never want to turn, like, if this thing gets huge, okay, but I'm not banking on it. I just enjoy
yeah,
meeting people like you. I think these amazing experiences, information I'm going to take on through life. I mean, not only just meeting a good person, but also having the time to sit down and realize like, oh, like we just got into a good conversation for an hour and we didn't even know each other. I think
yeah,
that shows to anybody it's applicable. I mean, if I can use that with anything, I just tell people it's not hard to have a conversation. We don't have to turn it into an argument. Just take the time to do so, and you never know where it goes.
yeah. But, but so, and that's amazing. And I think if but I'm just all that to say is like, let's say, you become massively successful. Some people might envy you. It might be like, oh, he's just a fucking, like whatever, one of those, the elites or God knows what. But it's like, motherfucker, he worked really fucking hard. Like while you were fucking, like playing Xbox, or I don't know, Call of Duty or God knows what, he was fucking doing this. He was hammering out 20 podcasts a fucking day. Like, over 10 years, that makes a difference. Like, I'm sorry, that makes a lot of fucking difference. And so at the same time, I don't begrudge, like I have like friends and family that don't work as hard, and that's fine. I'm not saying everyone needs to hustle. Like I think you have that, like, because you seem like a pretty extreme guy. Like you're like working out every day, you're doing podcasts every day. It's like, not some people, they just want to be chill, and that's cool too. We need to protect them. They're, but I think there's a way in society where you want to benefit those who work and strive a lot, and then also protect those that don't, that just want to have a very comfortable life. The problem, I think, in America, and I think in the rest of the world, is that now it's like we're just giving way too much to those who like strive, and like Jeff Bezos is a great, I think, he's a genius, he's extremely hardworking, as we all know, but does he really need 145 billion? Does anyone need 145 billion? Couldn't he be good with just 12 billion? Like that's what
I
I mean. It's like,
I just want enough money to buy a sloth. That's all.
there you go. Like I'm not, I mean, I was raised poor, but I'm so, like I'm not particularly rich now, but like I'm definitely a lot better than before. And it's like, I don't really, like, what do you really need? You just need, like you said, a sloth, a good conversation, a beer, for you, some weed, some good friends. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't like that. That's what you learn, is that you don't need anything else really.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's why, like, my cousin, he's a minimalist.
Yeah.
He does a lot of stuff where it's like reducing. And I think he said the best thing to me, which was like, we were walking by a homeless person. I was like, man, look at that homeless person. So sad. Should have got his life together. And my cousin just looks at me and goes, is he a homeless person or is he an expert minimalist? And I'm like, damn. And it made me really think, like, if you're really happy based on your possessions, are you happy? Or is it the fact that are you happy with really out not really having much? You're surviving, you're breathing, and you still love life and you don't have a lot. I think that's true happiness. And that's truly what life's really kind of about. I mean, if you hold all your possessions to your happiness, then what happens if all that stuff gets taken away? You're not going to be happy anymore. That's a
Yeah.
sad life.
No, exactly. Um, do you want to know about? Do you want to hear about the second
Y-
LSD experience,
Oh
or
yeah, 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 yeah.
I mean, it's up to you. You take it,
I'm not sure you
or,
said it
or,
now.
or we could also time. I'm having a good time with you, So,
I kind of want to hear the second trip now.
so the second trip, I did it with my good female friend, and so basically, so we did it. We took it at her place, and I had broken up with my ex fiance about a few months ago, and I was like pretty devastated, and so I was kind of like going there to just like find answers, get some find something, and so we took it, and I think the dose was stronger than the other dose I had before because literally, uh, I think kind of like I was telling you, the fabric of reality disintegrated, and it leads me to suspect that I think LSD and ayahuasca and mushrooms and weed and all these things, they're like, I think we live in a simulation, and I think a lot of people seem to think we live in that, right?
That's what
And I think
deja vu is, bro. It's a crack in that simulation.
so I think they're like almost like like those what do you call those, like like those cookies that game creators put in the game.
Oh, you're talking about Easter eggs.
Easter egg, there you go. Yeah, Easter eggs. I think they're like Easter eggs that help you break the fourth wall. That like, that help you kind of reach across the screen where your little Diablo 2 character reaches across the screen and says like, "Hey," or whatever.
That's what I get when I get deja vu. I'm like, did the system just crack? How did I get that information
Yeah.
before? Like, it makes you think. Honestly, even talking like this makes me want to reach behind the back of my head to make sure I don't have any cables plugged in or something. Like, I mean, a lot of stuff. I think the simulation aspect of stuff too. It also looks at the fact that as a world and like how we've been surviving, at least in America as a country, we're on a template. We're on a factory mindset. We've been doing the same kind of structured, programmed lifestyle for a very long time. And I think when you choose to go out of that structure, which happens like with technology, what happens with the way we're progressing as a society, it's pushing people out of these little lined up rows and it's pushing them out of the row. And then you get pushed back in. You're like, hold on a fucking minute. What was that I just experienced? What was this weird thing that just happened to me?
Yeah. Yeah. No, and so yeah, and like so I literally saw. I mean, this could just be because I watched The Matrix, but I saw the numbers, dude. I saw 100, like
Yeah.
you know instead of walls. That's what I saw. I saw like the code, and um and I basically, me and her, we went up to another dimension. That was clear. And what's funny is that we met in that other dimension, and we talked up there. We talked up there because she even asked me like, why can't we just stay up here? And what's weird is because I don't remember hearing her talk to me like on this level. It literally felt like she was like almost telepathic. Like it's like she was like, it's so beautiful up here. I guess that's what heaven could be like. But at the same time, I think heaven is like that. But I don't think that heaven is like this post mortem thing. Like you die and you go to heaven. I always believe that heaven and hell is right here on earth. It's a mindset. It's who you are. Like you could be in hell on earth right now, or it could be on heaven on earth right now, depending on what you do and how the actions and the state you produce. And she was like, yeah, it's so beautiful, like why can't we stay up here forever? And I'm like, I guess we can't, like that's just what it is. And in that other realm, we met the other beings. We met like that's all. I don't know, now it's sounding really crazy, but I guess they're kind of like our creators, or I guess they're kind of like our players. They're like they're I was and I want what I want to know was whether my ex fiance would be okay, because I felt terribly guilty for leaving her and all these things. So I'm like, is she gonna be okay? And he kind of responded, or it responded kind of like, like, of course she's gonna be okay. But what he meant was, and he kind of explained to me telepathically, was like, I can't guarantee you that on Earth she's gonna be okay, but I know her like soul or her player is gonna be fine, because she might go through hell on Earth, but then she's just gonna recycle up to heaven. And then if her player, or for the computer gamer, whatever, wants to play again, well, they could play again, and they'll just run the simulation again. And that kind of gave me comfort knowing that, okay, well, it's gonna be okay either way, in this really metaphysical type
It's the
way.
same thing we get with our thoughts a little bit when we're trying to talk ourselves up or talk ourselves down to something. You just experience that, but in a different form, basically. More of
Yeah, yeah.
a more of a, I would say, a vibrant one, like something that seemed a lot more real than just a thought in your head.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly. A lot of it is, it's not even like just a thought. It's like this gut thing. It's like this, you internalize into your whole body, and that's what LSD and a lot of these things do. It's not like a lot of these things we all know. Like we all know, like a lot of times, like, oh, I need to quit this job, or I need to stop talking to this friend, or I need to cut this person off. Like we know it in our head, but we can't muster up the strength, because we don't feel it in our body. There's this Tibetan saying. It's like, do not mistake understanding for realization, and do not mistake realization for liberation, because each one has like, it's a separate level, right, of internalization. And so understanding is kind of like the first basic one, which is kind of like what we're trying to do right here. But then after that, it might be some near death experience, or a psychedelic trip, or this big life changing event that's going to make you internalize it. That's going to make you like really just change everything. You see that all the time. My dad was smoked cigarettes. He was addicted for like 30 years, and then he got lung cancer. Boom, stopped right away. It's like, it wasn't that he thought that cigarette. He knew that cigarettes was bad. But it's just, so we all kind of need that. And I find that these drugs can help you if that's what you're looking for. Some people just use it for like having a good time, or they don't, or a lot of times the will isn't there. Like I've always kind of like you, I think, like I'm always searching for like everything, including my own defects or my own past trauma and all these things, right? Why I do what I do, especially why I do the bad things, that I do. And so that those powers and those faculties and that inquisitiveness gets augmented on psychedelics and on drugs, right? But if you're not looking for that, because I have friends that they don't care about that, they just want to have a good time, they just want to party, they just good vibes only, right? Just good vibes. So they take it, they're gonna get what they wanted to get, which is more good vibes, right? So
Well, a lot of those people are probably afraid to look at what needs to be corrected in their life as well, and don't really want to take that step towards it. They'd just rather experience the fun part about it.
exactly, there's a lot of that. I mean, like I don't want to like hate on those. Like I think some people are more about the pleasures and the senses, and other people are more about the deeper stuff. And like I think you know I'm I think a lot of those people live a perfectly good life too. Some people are just more like, I don't like to say simple in a pejorative way, because sometimes it's very zen in how simple they are, right? They're like, well, you know what? I go to work, I fix cars, makes me happy. I go home and my wife and kids, and just like, and they're just like, and they're not, and it's not fake. It's like, no, it's good. My life's good, and that's it, and that's
No
fine.
worries, no stress. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine too. So I think that if you have that, that's great. And I think if you're, for people like us, you can also veer the other side, which is like you get tortured with kind of like your all these thoughts, and kind of like your insomnia, right? Like that can like veer in a bad way, if you don't productively, change it.
I get grouchy when I get hungry. I'm not gonna lie.
So
I think this is like I did not see this podcast going this way. Thank you so much, dude. Seriously, like
how did you see it going?
I honestly thought we're like, oh, we're gonna talk some medical stuff and it's gonna stick on this situation. I felt like we are gonna talk about COVID for so long, but I'm happy I brought that up because I was like, I want to. That was a really good like understanding of it too, and I'm gonna message you after and send you some profiles. Like Duncan Trussell, you ever heard of him? He's been on
I,
Joe Rogan a few
yeah,
times.
he was on Joe Rogan. What does he talk about though? I
He
haven't really.
talks exactly what you just were talking about with all these descriptions of these seeing these extraterrestrial beings, all these types of things. He puts it in a way I think you're probably going to be like, oh shit, I know what he's talking about. And
Mm,
he created a show on Netflix, which is like it's a little bit like a drug trip show, but it's like, is that a drug trip show or is that showing us what the out of the simulation, that type of
mhm,
thing? It's something I think you feel like you probably resonate with. But
mhm.
I mean, I appreciate you giving me your time, first of all, Dan, doing the podcast, man. This has been awesome.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I think you're doing pretty good for yourself. I think keep it up. And yeah,
Is there anything you want to promote, such as your Instagram page?
not at all.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on and being on this episode of Out of the Blank podcast, and stay tuned for our next episode.